I think that if you have Role Player in your collection and you don't get either of the two expansions, you're really missing out by not having these monster cards. Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, and thanks for joining me for another Beyond the Base Game episode. Yes, your feedback was very positive about the other two I did for the Abyss expansions. Thank you very much for that. Thanks for all your suggestions on Patreon and YouTube as to which expansions I should cover. Granted, the last two videos haven't exactly generated the views, but they generated a lot of positive engagement from you, and that's the main thing. Now, Role Player is a significant game in my collection. It's in my top 100. I've got the very good sort of big box set from Thunderworks Games. This is essentially the box for the first expansion I'll tackle with this video, called Monsters and Minions. And as you can see, yeah, I've kind of got a lot of stuff for it, including a folded space insert as well for it. So I've kind of gone to town on this particular game, and with good reason, because this beats Sagrada, haha. But that's just my way. You know, I love this game. It's like you creating a D&D character using dice, and like the dice build up your attributes, but you acquire cards like your weapons, your armor, your traits, and things like that. And it's a wonderfully thematic like dice game. Yes, okay, you're just putting dice to build up the totals, and yes, there's some aspects like your backstory and alignment which are very puzzly. You know, they're not particularly they're more mechanical, shall we say, but that overarching theme of building a D&D character, this is perfect for someone like me who's had a history of playing a lot of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, yes, for those not initiated. You know, in my teenage and probably in my early 20s, I would say, I was playing quite a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, so this game just kind of worked for me. So anyway, on with that plot. Role Player, Monsters and Minions. This is the first of two expansions you can get for this game, and the other one is Fiends and Familiars. We will tackle that in a second video for this one. But to be honest, which one you get, kind of for the most part doesn't matter which one first, although I would probably suggest get this one first, and here's why. First of all, you've got quite a lot of content in this. You know, you are introduced to a fair amount of stuff compared to what you already had in the base game. Now, for variety's sake, you do get some extra cards from the market deck, so a few more spells, a few more weapons and armor and that, and you do get 5 more character sheets. I do not know if these 5 actually came with the game, because to be honest, there's nothing on them to dictate which set they come from, and by this point I've got so many of these character sheet boards, it's impossible to remember which ones came from which. So you get 5 more classes, great. You know, more variety is always a good thing. In terms of the cards from the market deck, they are what you've seen before, with the exception of these scroll cards. These scroll cards are a new sort of type that you can get in there, and essentially some traits and some armors might key off scrolls in particular, like if you've got so many scrolls, get more points, but they just basically do some interesting cool effects, although most of them are immediate abilities, so you sort of read the scroll and the effect goes off. But the real crux, oh no, one more thing actually first, before we get into the crux, boost die. So these, you won't be able to see them very well because they're effectively clear dice. They've got no colour, they're colourless, so if you're trying to fulfill your backstory, it won't do anything. But what these have is an interesting setup. They numbered from 3 to 8. So they actually have up to 8 pips on here. They look like normal D6s, but they go from 3 to 8. These are boost die. So they may come into effect by certain cards, but for the majority, you will basically use these in order to power up your attributes to the stupid levels. Because sometimes you might want to get 18 in attribute, and that means getting 3 6s, blimey. But you get one of these at 8, and suddenly that makes your life a bit easier at the cost of it being colourless. So if you've got cards that key off colours for points, or if you're trying to do your backstory, this die isn't going to help. There's also not that many of them either. I think there's only 11 or so of them in the game, so you don't have a lot of them to pull out of the bag once you put all the other dice in. So when you see these are relatively rare, and you might want to consider going for them. But of course, it's another option, and it's just more stuff that you can jiggle around in the bag, which is always nice. Now, the real crux of why Monsters and Minions is definitely an expansion you want. I mean, regardless of whether you get this or Fiends and Familiar first, you need an expansion for this game. You really do. I just recommend probably this one first, but you must get it. Everything else on this table is all keyed off this one aspect: Monsters and Minions. I mean, yeah, the title, what do you expect? But the idea is that it gives you another objective in the game. Yes, you're building up your character and you're trying to get points through there, but there are also these monster cards where you will select one for the whole game, and they've got multiplayer and solo play versions. I do like to play this game solo, but let's for example take the Kraken. Who doesn't like a good old Kraken? So you have the Kraken monster, and it's got a certain amount of health. It has a colour associated with it, and it will have some points that you can get at the end of the game, as well as a particular ability for when you fight it. You fight it at the end of the game. So once you've gone through as many rounds as necessary and everyone's filled up their attribute board, you essentially fight the monster. But how well you do against the monster depends on how much you've managed to build up through items and various other means your combat die for the encounter. The higher that you can roll on all your combat dice that you're allowed, the more points and sort of stuff you get for the monster. Now, this could be a focus of your game, or you could just ignore it entirely. It's entirely up to you. But here, for example, if I can get at least 28 on my dice, then I can get 8 points. That can be a substantial swing there. Of course, they all have their nasty abilities, like in this case, after final dice are rolled, remove all pairs of sixes. Whew. Good luck trying to get 28 without some bonuses if you lose all your pairs of sixes. But this is just one example. I mean, here you've got a demon, you've got a dragon, you've got a chimera, you've got a vampire, you've got a giant troll, and of course, as I said, you've got the solo and multiplayer versions of these. So this is a cool new aspect to the game. So how do you prepare for a giant monster encounter such as this? Well, main way to do it, go and kill the minions. Always kill the pawns before you go to the big boss. Here you've got all sorts of different things of shapes and sizes that you recognise in the D&D universe. Phantom, Bandit, Bugbear, Skeletal Rider, Wormling, Hobgoblin, Goblin, Ooze, Gnoll, Displacer, and Giant Spider. Why is there always a giant spider in these games? Seriously, I hate giant spiders. But with these, you essentially go on these as an alternative to going to the market. So rather than buying a market card or discarding it, you can go on the hunt for one of these things. There's one available each round. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to, like with the monster, roll combat dice and beat a certain tier of level, like roll at least a 6 or roll at least 12. But the idea with these is that if you do badly, you'll end up with injury tokens, a negative modifier against the main baddie. You could end up with glory tokens, a positive modifier against the main baddie, so nice and easy. But the two main things you want are either experience cubes, which can be spent to do a modicum of things like take different attribute actions, boost your combat die in a combat. There's quite a few little cool things that you can do with these, but it's essentially a bit like leveling up a character. You gain experience and then you spend it to get cool stuff for your character. Wonderfully thematic. But ideally, you want to get the highest tier on these in order to get trophies. And that's where these cards come in. When you select a monster, so in this case the dragon, you have obstacles, you have locations, and you have attacks. These are kind of like the traits associated with the boss, where it is, how it fights, and any other potential obstacle you may find. You select one for each of the 3 categories at random from here, and I think you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think you've got 3 of each. So 3 attacks, 3 locations, 3 obstacles, and you select one from each of them. So quite a bit of replay value there. But these are kept secret from everybody at the start of the game. But every time you acquire a trophy, you get to look at one of these cards. And what they do is that they essentially tell you ways to get bonus combat die in the final encounter that you know that the other players don't unless they get trophies as well. So you can get some forward knowledge. So for example, let's take this one, and this one. All right, we'll take those 3, nice and easy. So an attack card could be Claw Attack. All players with 4 or more gold dice on their character sheet gain 3 combat die. So you know that if you get 4 gold dice on your character sheet, you get a pretty good bonus. So you purposely during the round are thinking like, well, I've already got 2 of them. If I could just get 2 more, I could get a bonus for that. Do I care? But it's forward knowledge. Let's see the obstacle. Captured. All players gain 1 combat die for every 2 red die on their character sheet. Okay, so just like the other one, except it's red die. And here we've got Dragon Location Dungeon. The player with the fewest gold die on their character sheet gains 1 combat die. So, okay, it's a slight contradiction to another one, but again, you may have catered for one or the other. But then the other ones, I mean, all players with 4 or more trait cards gain 3 dice. All players with 3 or more red die, the most boost die on their sheet gain 4 XP. The player with the most armor cards, the players with 2 or more minion trophies, and 1 combat die for each red in their strength row. So there's all sorts of different abilities that you can get. And as I say, you pick 1 from each category, of which there are 3 cards, for the monster you are fighting. I just read you out a bunch of them for the dragon. There's a set of these for the Kraken, the demon, That's another Kraken. The Dragon, I've already done. The Chimera, the Vampire, the Giant Troll. There's a set of 9 cards for each of these bosses. That is an insane amount of replay value in the game that you will never really end up with the same combination twice unless you play this game religiously. That's essentially the content that this game adds, but why I think this expansion is a must-buy. Not necessarily your first, because as we'll see in the other video, you get an element of this stuff in the second expansion as well, but this just adds such a cool thematic addition to the game. The game is already really thematic for a dice game, and it's already a lot of fun. But with this, now I have an alternative path to take, an alternative way of scoring points in addition to what I'm already doing. And the idea that you can kill these monsters, you might see like a market that's rubbish, and it's like, there's nothing really in the market, and I don't want to just discard a card for 2 gold, that's pretty boring. But it's like, ooh, a goblin. And you decide to go kill him instead. You do well, you get the trophy, and you find out something about the final boss. You might not even be caring that much about the final boss, but you may decide you want to focus entirely on it. Like, I'm going to make certain I get the free trophies, build up for that boss, hopefully not to the detriment of doing other point scoring opportunities like your backstory and that. But then it means that when I do fight the demon, I know exactly what to do, and I'm going to have like 9 combat dice and throw them, and I'll get like the full 8+ points there. You can explain stuff like the tokens, when you need to. You can explain what a boost die is when someone draws it out of the bag for the initiative row. And the experience, you can explain how experience works when people get experience. This is one of those expansions that not only is fun to play with, but it's easy to teach and can be taught for the most part as the game progresses. And I love expansions that allow you to do that without having to bombard someone with a bucket load of rules before the game starts. I love this expansion. This is like a 10 out of 10 expansion for me. Absolutely a must buy. The Fiends and Familiars is similar to this one but has another trait to it, which is why I would probably say that this one is better than Fiends to get first. But I think that if you have Role Player in your collection and you don't get either of the 2 expansions, you're really missing out by not having these monster cards. I mean, the scrolls are nice, the extra cards and classes are nice, a few extra backstories and alignments. I mean, there's so many of them in the box now, it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, and that's just replay value, and that's just variety, which I do like. But in terms of just fundamentally changing how the game can play and fixing 1 or 2 minor elements I had with the base game, like I say, a dud market row phase, which are now, I wasn't a fan of, now they're fixed. And now you've got something cool, and it just adds to the wonderful theme that Role Player has. So that's my overview of what is included in Monsters and Minions. Like I say, if you like how this series is turning out, then leave me some feedback. Let me know what expansions you'd like to see. And of course, don't forget to tune in for the Fiends and Familiars expansion, which I'm going to record in just a second. So take care, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. And remember, it's only a game. Take care, everyone. Die, giant spider!